done, the trim is on. We ordered some new little pieces of trim for that, being that we use those center pieces on the outside, so those are on their way right now. 98% of the front of the car is done, like I said, other than the front bumpers going on. So before I had anything else up front to impede me getting up underneath this hood easily, we're going to get this opened up and start figuring out some cool engine covers, something that we can make out of sheet metal that's going to cover up those valve covers, all the hoses, the wiring, and all of that stuff, and at the same time be easily removable for any type of maintenance or anything like that. Let's jump into that. So we've got a pile of cardboard here. These will eventually be my patterns for the valve cover, for the covers for that. And a piece of tag board, a couple rough measurements. I'm just going to start cutting out shapes and see what So this goes up to where the valve cover, the plastic cover starts to swell up. So it's about 7 inches shy of how long it needs to be. And I think the whole piece will end up being in like 1, 2, 3, like 4 pieces, all separately welded together. This edge here, I'm going to roll so it'll match this edge. So this will all roll over with a 1-inch radius. This will, or 1-inch diameter. This will roll over with a 1-inch. I'm gonna go ahead and start on this side because I know exactly where all this stuff goes. I can get this bend put in, I can get this step put in, and I can get all these slots cut out. And then I'm gonna do a slow, slight frickin' radius across this large area here. And then I can start to figure out exactly where I want this to bend and where I want the end to end up. All right, so I know that this is my profile of the end of the valve cover. So I started off by making that piece. I made it long just because we don't know how far down this needs to go quite yet till we get it set in place, and I can slowly trim it back. So I started with that piece because that's how I know how this piece is going to be shaped, because it needs to curve around that. So I've got my 2 pieces made. I rolled them over on the die, on the bead roller, did a bunch of shrinking, got this edge to come around, smoothed it out best I could, put a little step on this front edge because I'm pretty sure this is where this one's going to end. I still have to cut all these little notches out, but I'm going to keep it one piece for the moment. And then did the same thing on my profile piece, shrunk it around the edge, ran it through the die on the bead roller, and just did a little hammer and dolly work on it. So I'm going go ahead and take a chance on it and weld these two pieces together where I know that they go. I made a couple little lines on it when I made my template so I know what parts line up. It's a little trick I picked up from Amy doing her upholstery stuff, trying to fit these two pieces together and make sure they're in the same spot as they are when I do the pattern. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and weld these things up. Hopefully it makes a nice piece, not a nice piece of garbage. Put a flat die in the English wheel, try to smooth this out just a hair more. And we'll start trimming. I can cut all these little holes and slots out and start fitting this thing on there. I got a pretty good fit so far on the back side of the aesthetic valve cover. It's obviously not going to hold oil, being that you just watched me cut a bunch of grooves and stuff in it, but it will look like a nice smooth metal valve cover, and we'll cover all these wires and coils and all of that crap. So there's the dipstick hole. I got that pretty well lined up. We're gonna probably run a tube down into that. So now I need to start messing with this front edge of it. I think I need to put a hair more of an arc on because I'm a little close to a couple of these plugs. I think that's like a cam sensor or something there. All right, so I jumped ahead a little bit. I got the next piece made. This is where that valve cover starts to swell towards the top. And this will line up with the original valve cover. I'm gonna go grab that off the car right now, and we'll get this piece tacked. Yeah, it should line up very nicely. Here's the last piece for the driver's side valve cover. Go ahead and get that tacked on. And then we will start the final fitment, get this last little bead roll all the way around the outside of everything. I need to trim back a little spot on this side just so it's easier to clear and get the cover up and around the booster and everything for the brakes. All right, we've got the driver side valve cover, engine cover, pretty much complete. I still have some tabs to put on it for attachment, and I have to deal with the dipstick hole yet. Shouldn't take much more than a little bit of primer and some paint on it. That thing will look gorgeous. So I'm going to take all the patterns from that. This is the same shape, and the way I've got it tucked in and everything, it should fit no problem with the inner fender here. I think our biggest issue is going to be what we have to trim away just to make it easy to put this thing on and take it back off. The trick to this situation here is one step at a time. It is really easy to get overwhelmed. There is a lot of little red caps that need to be terminated to places up underneath here. A lot of tanks, a lot of hoses, a lot of plumbing, and we want it to look clean. So one piece at a time. And right now we have the beauty covers done. I just dealt with the oil filler cap setup, which looks beautiful. We're going to move on to the vents. Instead of venting it back up through the intake, gumming the intake up with oil and crap, we're going to vent both sides out to the atmosphere, which is some nice little vent caps. So that PCV valve will come out there, come out, and we will put a cap on. This one, we got to drill a hole, do the same thing, put a cap on it. I've got a nice little dish set up that I'm going to weld in place, and I'll show you that just to clean that up, make it look nice. And then I've got a couple ideas how to deal with this dipstick. After that, instead of my original design of putting some tabs on the inside with some grommets that lock onto the studs, like in the corners, these things are on here and they are like solid right now. Like they'd probably stay put just the way they are. But just to make sure, we're going to take a couple of the coil bolts out, replace them with some longer studs, and then we'll have a couple bolts on each side just to keep them located and in place. And then on the underside of these metal covers, we're going to put some sound deadener heat control Thermatec in there just to help deal with any noises, rattles, vibration, and control the heat, because these are all going to be painted and very pretty. But we also want them to be usable. So let's get that part dealt with and ignore the rest of these red caps till we get to them. All right, here she is with the valve cover off, and I recentered that hole. I'm actually going to make it about 1/4 inch smaller than what it is. This is that
filler neck setup. Looks a little rough. I got a little sanding to do on it, but it's got a nice little rolled edge on the inside. And how I did that was I took a piece of pipe and I rounded a bolt off, put this bolt in the vise, and then I just sat there with a hammer and beat the edge over on this nice little curl all the way around on the inside until we got that to fit. All right, a little grinding, smoothing, screwing around. Got that hole all opened up. The filler neck is in. Here's my breather. We'll get some new ones, and I still got to replace that PCV valve in there. But a piece of hose. Boom. How freaking beautiful is that? So, a couple of bolts to fasten it down. I think I'll deal with the fasteners once we have the front end and we're starting to take this apart. So I can actually like sit down right next to the motor. We won't have this big fender and all that stuff in the way. Okay, so I put a rubber hose on the PCV valve on the driver's side, and the bottom of this is still pretty dirty. So when I set it in place, it left me a little mark on the bottom. So I drilled a small hole, not this one obviously, like a 1/4 inch hole, put it back on, and kept opening it up until I had this 1 1/4 inch hole that was dead center over the PCV valve. So the bowl or the dish that I'm going to make that drops in here is still going to be significantly larger than this hole, but this gives me a good start at the center and where to go. So I'm going to set that aside for just a second here. I've got a piece of 2 1/4 inch exhaust tubing sitting here mounted in the vise, and then I just took a piece of 18 gauge. The rest of the covers are pretty much 20 gauge, but I'm going to be doing a lot of stretching on this thing to get the bowl. So I'm going to start with an 18. I made a little circle of what the opening is here. I'm going to set it over the top. This giant ball peen hammer. And put it down. Alright, so now that I got it about as deep as I want, she's kind of wonky. So, this nice little 2-inch ball hitch. So now I've got a pretty good dome. Go ahead and get this thing out of here. Get body hammer out. Alright, pretty good little dome. Go ahead and trim this out. Drill this center hole. Open that up, drill that center hole, cut this out, and then I'll lay this on top of the valve cover, trace it. Take the little die grinder, open this up, and we'll weld this in. Alright, there is the driver's side with the vent installed, the crankcase vent. So I got a little cleaning up to do on that, and then made some little rough marks for the dipstick hole. That thing is going to be very, very interesting. So, like I said, I've got an idea how I want to do it, so let's see if that works as well as everything else has at this point, and we'll keep moving on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and try out this little plan that I had earlier and see if this will actually work or not. If it doesn't work, then I wasted freaking 10 minutes and a piece of scrap stainless, or not stainless, piece of scrap steel. So. It gives me a better piece. Well, I don't know. The biggest worry is I might not be able to get it apart. Okay. That's pretty good. I like it. Go ahead and trim this thing out. All right, well the press worked perfectly, and then I welded that little piece to the bottom of my piece of pipe here. And the hole is a hair offset because the dipstick, well, all right, well let's hope that didn't just dent that to hell. When you look down at the valve cover like that, the dipstick was a little further towards the center of the motor. So that should make that all line up perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and weld that in, and we'll check for fit. All right, we got this thing pretty much done. Here's my inset, little hole in the back for the dipstick. That's our hole for the breather. Everything else is pretty much ready to go. We need to, it's the inside, so you can kind of see how that piece all went together up in there. All right, the next part of the puzzle is in and together. We've got the dipstick hole done. Both of the breather vents are in place, and everything is adjusted and fits freaking perfect. So here's the breather and the oil filler cap on this side. I've got really huge fat hands, and I can get in there, pop that cap on and off, no problem, and reach in and get the dipstick, check the oil. So if I can get my fat hands in there to do it, then I don't think anyone's going to have an issue. The covers are very solid and stout where they're sitting, but they are still pretty easily removable for maintenance. And I mean, we could probably leave them the way they are, but once they get the bodywork and everything painted on them, we're going to put some Thermatec underneath just to take care of any rattles and heat. And then I think I'm going to put a couple of studs off the coil packs under there that poke through with a nut just for some mechanical fastening on there, just to be sure. But yeah, now that that is done, I'm going to sit and stare at this thing for a minute because it just looks cool and it was a lot of work. And start planning on getting this panel off and fitting these radiators, pumps, and plumbing and everything for the intercooler in here.
I'm gonna push the button, 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 push the button.